Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of The Disturbing Truth. So tonight we want to focus on a recent episode that's been released by Abu al-Sadiq, from whom his peace, the Qayyim of the family of Muhammad. And in this episode he has basically given instructions on what we can do to be saved, what humanity can do to be saved from this coming punishment which is about to hit mankind. So I'm joined today with Sarah al-Mahdi, Jasmine al-Mahdi and Saiha al-Mahdi.
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay, so yeah, the state of the world today is basically unprecedented. It's like the worst we've ever seen it, right? So we have this, it seems like every single day, like something is happening in the news where it's getting worse and worse. And we're reaching this like crisis situation. So, I mean, most recently we've had this Hurricane Milton in Florida, which was extremely catastrophic, and experts even were shocked. And they said that this is like an unprecedented level that hasn't been seen in like over 1,000 years or, hundreds of years, basically. So this is a really, really shocking event that's happening. And for sure, this is part of the punishment. And, we're being like bombarded with these images from the war coming out of, the war with Israel, Gaza, Lebanon. Today I was like scrolling through Twitter and I saw basically these horrific, the horrific videos basically of this like father holding his like dead child and sobbing, or it's like children with their parents who've died and like crying, and it's like extremely awful images that we're seeing and almost becoming desensitized. So we're almost becoming used to seeing these images on a daily basis because they're everywhere, and I mean they're so shocking. So this is really, really bad. Like the world has never been this bad. Especially in our lifetime, we've never seen this kind of crisis level disasters literally everywhere we look. So, and when we see the world in a state like this, this is what Abu al-Sadiq, from him his peace, he said in the video, it's an obligation for mankind to stop and reflect over words that have come in the scriptures before, whether the Torah or the Gospels or the Holy Quran. So, and people, they wonder in a time like this, where is God? Because lots of people, they seek out a higher power to save them when they begin to go through this kind of suffering. And many people wonder, why has God not intervened to save them? Or where is God in all of this, basically? And if we look in the Quran, we see a verse which says, we never punish until we have sent a messenger to give warning. Okay, so I mean, this is very strong words. Yeah. So from this, we have to understand that any punishment which is befalling mankind, any punishment which we're seeing, we have been warned about. There has been a messenger at some point. And, we have different kinds of punishment. We can have punishments that engulf the whole world. For example, the flood in the time of Noah. And this was something that hit all of mankind. It was worldwide. And then we have punishments which are specific to particular locations. So there's also another verse in the Quran which says how many villages were struck by our punishment. So, particular towns or particular villages can get struck with a specific punishment that's for them. And Abu al-Sadiq, from him his peace, he gave this example of the time before Islam, before the birth of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family, where Abraha was invading basically with an army of elephants towards the Kaaba. And this specific army basically was struck with a punishment of these birds which dropped these clay rocks on them. So this was like specific only to armies, and we can have, larger scale punishments and everything in between. And they can be anything like a natural disaster such as a flood or a hurricane, or strong winds that destroy everything in the case of Prophet Hud and Saleh. Or we can have fire and brimstone basically that falls from the heavens in the case of Prophet Lot, right?
There's many examples. Abu Sadiq, from him his peace, also mentioned examples like the sword or wars that happen are also punishments against the people. So the sword of the oppressor, we're talking about the sword of the oppressor, or the war of the non-believers, is a punishment against the believing people. And we have example like King Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians. We also have the Assyrians who enslaved or exiled the Israelites. We also have in the scriptures this example of Sarah, the wife of Abraham, peace be upon him. She was given glad tidings of having a son. And she laughed. The Bible mentions she just laughed. And this was an act of disbelief, or like an act of doubt, rather, to say. So it was an apparent disbelief, right? And it was the command of God. And she just laughed, and she didn't believe that she was going to get pregnant because she's been barren, right? And so God ordained that he would punish Sarah through her children with giving, allowing them to have 400 years of slavery in Egypt, right? So this was also some type of punishment that happened. Another example is that Christians, they believed that God punished the Israelites, right? By banishing them from Israel for 2,000 years around that time, right? Around 2,000 years. And the Romans, they destroyed the Second Temple. And this was all due to them wanting to crucify Jesus, and did so on the apparent, right? So there's multiple punishments. There's punishment, like you mentioned before, natural disasters that are happening in this day and age, that did happen also back in the day. Or there were also examples of animals that were a punishment for the people. And if I give an example, if you look at Prophet Elijah, or also called Elias, he was walking once, and there were children who passed by him and mocked him and called him Baldy. And so these God placed a curse on these people. They were non-believers, and out of the forest came bears out, and these bears, they destroyed the whole disbelieving nation. So we can see that there are so many examples of how a punishment can strike a people. Animals against the man, like, just starts to go against mankind. We see as a punishment, of course, natural disasters, or cities being besieged, or people exiled or displaced or murdered or raped. These are all things that are happening as punishment. And why? Because it's because of these oppressors that have done so. And all these people who went through these punishments were warned by a messenger. And just like the verse mentioned, they were warned by a messenger. These people, they rejected this messenger, or they ignored the messenger, or they didn't recognize the messenger, or they were so busy in their daily lives with partying and doing a bunch of other things, thinking about marriage and all these things, and ignoring that there was a messenger that existed. Yeah,
like in the time of Noah, right? This is exactly what they were doing when Noah was warning them about the flood. Just enjoying their life.
Partying and all these things, and then, it was too late.
And this is also mentioned by Jesus in the Gospels. He says that as in the time of Noah, people were drinking and having fun and marrying and giving each other in marriage until the flood came and Noah's ark was closed, and then it was too late for them.
So it's a message for people, to remind people that, hey, wake up. If you see punishments happening on the earth, know that there's been a messenger who warned. You need to find that messenger. Who was it? Because that's what the Holy Book is stating. And if you believe in that Holy Book, you have to believe in the statement that when you see the world going crazy as it's going today, it means that there is someone there. There is a messenger there.
And there are people, especially what's happening in Gaza, for example, the Muslims, they say it's because they are martyrs. It's because God allowed them to be martyrs. That's why they're dying. But in reality, this has never been God's ways. He wouldn't be punishing and sending his punishment down on the entire nation unless they had done something and there's no believers in it, because he doesn't punish the believers like that with a strong punishment on the town. The only instances where we see that in the Quran, for Muslims, is when God punishes a town when they've disbelieved and ignored or killed the messenger. This is the only time.
Yeah, so we know that when it happens, the people have to look within themselves and not think that they are oppressed and believe that they're oppressed. Like, this happens a lot today. If we just take the wars that are happening, the people must be thinking, the Muslims be thinking, oh, we're so oppressed by the Israelites, we are the victims, and vice versa. When the Israelites are getting attacked, and they were thinking, oh, we're the ones who are oppressed, we're the victims. But that's not the case. We can't think of ourselves being victims or ourselves being oppressed when the verse clearly said that God wouldn't do that. There has to be a messenger there.
Yeah.
So we have examples of if we look at Zechariah and John the Baptist and Jesus, these prophets, peace be upon them, they were sent to the people, to the Jews, and none of the Jews, they didn't recognize, most of them, they don't recognize these as prophets. And the king of the Jews was the one who killed Zechariah and John the Baptist. And this was before Jesus came. And so when Jesus came, it was like the last drop. Now, the Jewish people had been sent 3 messengers, and they didn't believe in them. They went against them. They rejected them. And so the result was the absence of prophethood and revelation. They didn't get that anymore. So they lost their temple, it got attacked, it was gone, and the people were scattered and exiled. So no one entered Israel until after around 2,000 years later.
You know, it's so interesting to see that Jews still believing that they're the chosen people of God, when they believe that basically at the temple that they have is like a phone number to God. You know, so this temple was taken away from them for 3,000 years. So I was thinking, if your mother doesn't call you, it's probably because she disowned you. She doesn't love you anymore. So why would they be thinking that they're still the chosen people, that they're not under the curse of God, if God doesn't even communicate with them anymore for 3,000 years?
It's insane, and it's a wake-up call for the people. They have to wonder what happened. Where did we go wrong?
Yeah, instead of what did God do, what did I do?
People shouldn't
why is God doing this?
Shouldn't stay in denial, that they're victims in all of this, and that God is still with them, still communicating with them when He's not. It's really like the time to be honest with ourselves, basically, and look inside ourselves and say, am I really on the right path? Is my relationship with God in a good place, because this is the time when we need to have a relationship with God. We need to have this connection with God, with this punishment which is approaching. It's such an important time. So it's really important to just be honest with ourselves and not stay in this state of denial that I think is easy to
and that's
remain
what the
in.
people did back in the day. And it's not just the Jews, it's also the Muslims. If we look, Prophet Muhammad and his family, peace be upon them, they came and they were oppressed, and they were the rightful successors, and that was taken away from them, and they were oppressed, and one after the other was killed. And we had a whole episode talking about their lives, of the lives of the prophets and the Prophet Muhammad and the Imams, peace be upon them, and until today, the state of the Islam, the Muslim nation, is lost, and they haven't
gone back from it.
They haven't gone back from it.
See, now that's the key word. They haven't returned from it. Yeah. And they haven't repented from it, or they're in denial of it, and they too are acting like victims. So we've covered the verse that God does not send a punishment until He sends a messenger. So there's another verse that's a very interesting one that we should note, that Abu Saif from his piece also mentions in the video, and that is in the Holy Quran, chapter 8, verse 33, it mentions, but Allah would not punish them while you, O Muhammad, while you, O Prophet, are among them, and Allah would not punish them while they seek forgiveness. So Allah would not punish them while you, O Messenger, are in the midst of them, right? Until basically, unless if they seek forgiveness. So this verse, it could be understood as a believer who's repenting, right? If they're in repentance and they're seeking forgiveness of God, God would not send a punishment down. Or or it could be understood as what the verse says, that if there's a messenger amongst them in their midst, God would not send that punishment down. So this would give a hope, right? This verse, this should give hope to these nations. It should give hope that if you're repentful or in that state of repentance, and you're seeking forgiveness from God, that He would not allow such the what's going on around the world right now in the Middle East, or the natural disasters that are going everywhere. These things wouldn't happen. So why is this important, this verse? Because then you can also reflect on the story of Jonah. The story of Jonah, why is it so important, and why should people think about it, like truly like contemplate upon it? In the time of Jonah, when he came as a messenger and he called towards the supremacy of God, yes, people fought him, they rejected him, and as time, but when they saw the punishment coming towards them, it was overshadowing them. What did they do? They sought forgiveness.
Yeah.
They repented.
Yeah.
So what happened?
They changed.
Yeah.
So the punishment was taken away from them. And, you know, this is like, it gives you hope hearing this, but it's also kind of scary because it shows, you know, that the places where the punishment has come, there was no believers, there were no people who were seeking forgiveness or repenting in these places, you know, not...
Exactly. And we look in the world today. I mean, the punishment is upon people. What's going on?
Yeah,
people have to look back.
So if you're if you're a repentful nation, and if you're a repentful nation that's sincerely asking forgiveness from God and is a true believer in God and His supremacy, it's the key. It's the supremacy of God, because you can imagine you're a believer of God, but what does that even mean? What action do you take? Oh, I believe in God. What does that mean? Where does it? How do you state with your actions that you believe in a God? You believe in the messenger He sent. So. You're right, that is the most disturbing part of this whole thing, is that verse, if you really contemplate over it, that He would never do such a thing if a sincere believer is in a nation or a messenger is amongst them. Such a punishment will never behold. Like, for example, now if you look at Gaza, now if you look at Lebanon, now if you look at Israel, now if you look at even Florida or any of whatever chaos that's going around in the nations across the world, it's quite... It's not a light matter, and that's why I was like, in the video he urges, like, he is truly like calling out, like it's like a cry, like it's saying that, please people, like, take this advice from a man who wants nothing but the betterment for humanity, who wants the best for mankind. That this is a serious matter. You think it's a normal thing what's happening when your own people are admitting, as you said in the early part of the episode, that something like this disaster hasn't been seen in 1,000 years.
Exactly.
And how, if you just think about it, what is Abu Salah from His peace doing? He is telling people what the previous prophets and messengers said. He is literally taking the stories of the past and comparing them to what's happening today. What man does that unless it's a man from God?
Exactly.
Because he's not bringing something forth and asking something in return, right? He's just saying, just look at these stories, look at them, and realize what is happening to you. Wake up, wake up.
All of the stories, all of the scriptures, they all serve as examples and as warnings to the disbelievers and as glad tidings to the believers, because those who believe, they want God to be their king. So He's telling the believers glad tidings to you that the kingdom of God is coming, supremacy is to God, is going to be established. And then to the disbelievers saying, if you continue in the way that you're going,
this is what's going to happen.
If you continue choosing the supremacy of the people, of the corrupt tyrants, you're going to be punished by your own doings. It's not, God is not sending the punishment. That punishment, He's allowing it to happen because those are the fruits of their doing. You know, so take for example, you know, the story in Genesis of Abraham. You know, when God told Abraham about the punishment that was going to come to Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham, even though, you know, they've committed atrocities, you know, he still pleaded with God. This is the messenger of God. This is the character of the messenger of God. Even after all of those horrible things that they were doing to passerbys, to their guests, to their own people, he still pleaded with God on their behalf. And the most important part of that story is that he pleaded with God, and he said, if there are 50 people left who are believers in this town, would you spare the entire town? And he said, and God said, yes, I will spare the entire town if there are only 50 people who are believers. Then he says, what about if there's 45? And then he goes down all the way to 1. He says that if there is one true believer in this town, I will spare the entire town. So then the angels, they go down to Lot's family. Lot's family were the only believers, and they were gonna tell him, hey, there's gonna be a punishment that's coming down on your town, so you need to leave. You know, so the only people who believed, they were taken out of the town before the punishment came down. And even the angels said to Lot, they said, we cannot send down this punishment until you are out of town. These are the words that he says. So if there's a single one believer in the entire town, the punishment will not come down. So all of these towns that are being destroyed, Gaza that's being destroyed, Florida is being destroyed, all of these towns, there's not even a single believer, and there's no messenger in that town.
That's so
you know,
scary.
this is a disturbing truth that you have to admit, even if it's your people that is dying, even if it's the Muslims that you love so much, you have to admit that the punishment is not coming down on believers, it's coming down on disbelievers who are not for the supremacy of God.
Exactly. And that's according to your own book. Both the
stories are in there.
So if anyone has an issue with it, you have an issue with your own religions.
The scriptures are there as warnings. They're there as instructions. Allah doesn't do anything for no reason.
Exactly.
You know, Allah is the all-knowing, the all-wise. So obviously He wouldn't leave these stories for thousands of years for us to...
Like a good night story.
There are songs about these stories. We teach them to our children. We're always talking about them. If I say Lot, everybody knows what they're talking about.
Exactly.
This is for that reason, so that you cannot stand in front of God and say, you didn't warn me.
It's true.
Exactly. So God does not bring down a punishment to a place where there's a messenger or like anyone who is repenting or anyone who is a believer. So, you know, when Abba al-Sadiq from his peace said, you know, when he was making this episode, he said basically that there might be believers watching this, or there might be people who are watching this, who are seeing this message and thinking, yeah, this is true. Like, you know, I believe in this message, even if they're not believers yet. And the advice that he gave to them was, you know, get away from these places where the punishment is about to come, where you can feel like the winds of these punishments approaching.
Just like how Lot and his family did so.
Yeah, like run away from these places where you're surrounded by people who reject the messenger. And, you know, I was thinking about when he said this morning, and it's like, you know, it's so scary actually, because I think some people, they can become really complacent and caught up in other people's denial of something. And they think, you know, if all these other people are saying it's not true, then I'm just going to go with that, like what they're saying kind of thing.
Stay in their comfort.
Kind of like feel safe in a comfort zone of like being surrounded by other people. But this is not like a safe place. And actually, if you follow someone else's opinion in this time, then you'll follow their opinion wherever they're going. So, you know, it's really important to look inside yourself and feel like deep down, are you right, like with God at the moment? Like, do you feel like right? Do you feel like you're in the right place? Because I think we all have this sense that like something really big is about to happen in the world. And it's so important, you know, to find that man who's appointed by God and to find that, you know, true refuge and to be on like the straight path that leads us to salvation. Because it's just a scary time right now. And, you know, Abba al-Sadiq from him his peace, you know, later on in the episode, he gave a message for the people who aren't able to leave. He gave them advice basically. And so he reminded us of this story during the time of Moses. So the Israelites are, you know, they can't leave Egypt basically because Pharaoh and his army will stop them when they're enslaved by Egypt. And Moses, you know, he tells them about this punishment which is about to come, which is like the firstborn child of every human and animal is going to die. So this is a punishment from God that's approaching, and he gives them basically a way for the believers to be safe from this punishment. And that is that he tells them to slaughter a lamb and to put the blood of the lamb on their door basically. So the punishment, when it comes, it will pass over them.
And that's why they call it the Passover.
Exactly,
bear in mind when Abu Saik also said that it's like when even in the time of Moses when they put the blood over the home, it started off not just as a apparent thing that you just write that the supremacy is God. You have to truly, as a believer, believe in that the supremacy of God is from your heart. The supremacy of God starts in your heart. You have to truly believe what you're writing is. It's not like a spell that you just write over on the wall and the punishment won't come. But you have to truly believe what you're writing.
So yeah, when they have this blood on the wall and they've written it on, then these houses are going to be safe. They're not going to be afflicted by the punishment. So the believers will be safe in this punishment, and the disbelievers, they're going to be hit with this punishment, basically. And he clarified basically the reason that these punishments strike. The reason for all of these punishments that we see throughout time until now, they've always been, since the time of Adam. That people rejected the message, and the message has always been the supremacy of God, to accept the messenger, to follow the messenger who God appointed, to obey the man that God appointed over us as the leader, and the supremacy of God. And the punishments that have come to people have always been because they rejected that message, right?
Yeah, that's true. And if we look in Islam, so obviously the Muslims, they believe that Prophet Muhammad came, and that he came with the Quran. And in the Quran, it's said we have not sent a messenger except to be obeyed. So the messenger has to be obeyed. And the Quran also says we are the ones who appoint a ruler and the caliph, like when God appointed Adam as a caliph. So he's the one who appoints a ruler or a caliph or a successor in the land. And the successors are to be obeyed.
And look at what happened to the one that didn't obey Adam. Who didn't prostrate to Adam.
Yeah, and that was Iblis.
Yeah, and guess what? He did not want to obey the Caliph of God. And then he said, I'm going to make sure that everyone else does the same thing that I am doing. Right. So all of these people who are saying, no, I'm not going to obey the messenger, you are literally following in the footsteps of God. And Iblis, the Quran also says, do not, O you who believe, do not follow in the footsteps of Satan.
Yeah, exactly. And even the Bible mentions that God is the one who chooses the successors.
Of course,
He's the one who anoints, he appoints, he makes a king divinely appointed or the ruler. So this is within the religions of God. This is no discussion about, right? So God, he sent Jesus Christ as the Messiah, right? And he was the king of the Jews. That's what his title is. So mankind obeyed Jesus and they followed him if they wanted goodness, right? And so they had to also not just follow Jesus, but also reject the tyrants. They had to reject the Romans who occupied the lands and the Caesar, or whether it was the false priests and the preachers, whoever it was, they had to reject them. And it meant that they had to reject the religious body, right? The religious body that supports the false kings, the false rulers, like King Herod, who was killing prophets, he was oppressing, he was not appointed by God, really, and he was calling toward polytheism. And he was breaking the commandments of God, like he did everything that is wrong and nothing that was right. And the Torah also mentions things like this. The Israelites, like God was angry with the Israelites for rejecting Samuel and wanting God to appoint a king. So this offended God so much, and we've spoken about it so many times, because they demanded a king, right? They wanted the king. Then they went astray because of that. And in the end, they followed rulers who were not even appointed by God. So they just went all wrong. And that's when the punishment came down. Because when they asked Samuel for God to choose a king, and Samuel said no, and God told Samuel, let them, but tell them that this and this and this and this will happen. And he just mentioned a bunch of terrible things that would happen to the people. This is because they don't want what God wants. So what's the end result becomes that you will just follow the ones who are astray, and you will not follow God. So the punishment came down at that time. How? And why would the punishment come down? Because they were following these false kings and rulers, and these people are the ones who lead them astray. And they dragged them into wars, and they got the sin of that king. So the king tells them, go to war, and they do so. So they get the sin of that king because they supported that ruler.
Yeah, so basically everything the king does, if they're following this king and they're supporting this king, they're responsible for all the evil that he does as well.
Exactly, because the prophet said, the prophets, they said, if somebody is killed in the west and somebody in the east is pleased with that, well, then they partake in that punishment of that individual.
Yeah, so even if he's pleased with it.
Pleased, that's insane. And here people are voting for that king or ruler, and they're choosing that king or that ruler, or they're saying that they are following this religious leader or ruler who then goes and does these atrocities in the world.
So if you're voting for like a prime minister or a president who's starting a war in another country or invading another country, then you are, to
blame as well, because you chose that ruler.
Yeah, and the point. So I was like, he brought the point that this is happening because the people earned it. It's their hands that have earned this punishment upon themselves. Yeah. It's a karma. And this karma it exists. It's a force that exists, and it seems to be the law of this physical universe. And it's not because, like, you see, God he's unjust and he's merciless and he's just some crazy like being that just is out to just wanting to just kill
follow
anyone.
My prophet, and if you don't,
exactly. So if like if I send a messenger to you, like for example Noah, if I send Noah to you and you reject him, how dare you reject him? Now I'm mad at you. So then he goes and sends a flood. No, it's not because of this.
Yeah,
it's because it's a sin. A sin has been committed, and from that sin you have to make that karma. So for example, what is taking place in Florida right now, I was like brought to our attention, is what the hurricane and the natural disasters that are happening in Florida right now. So if you think about it, right, what's happening in Florida right now? There's a really huge natural disaster, the hurricane, and then millions are being displaced. Millions are without electricity. Millions are, even though they have a military, many millions of homes are being demolished. People don't know where to go, what to do. They have to take refuge in other states. They have to leave their homes, and they don't even know if they're ever going to go back. Parts of Florida, cities in Florida are not going to be recognizable. It's like Armageddon. Yeah. Actually, for the people there, it's the end times. What they feel like is this is the crazy. For them. If there was no, let's go back in time. For Florida, if there was no such thing as the media or social media and the way, knowing what's happening in the East and the West, and the people in Florida, their whole world was just Florida, for them it's the end of the world.
Definitely.
So bear that in mind, like how that would imagine back in the times. For them, it was equivalent to what's going on in the time of prophethood,
exactly.
When the tornado comes.
Completely biblical event.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a huge biblical event. So now think about it. So there's this punishment that's going on in Lebanon, in the Middle East, and then there's this like at the same time you have now a punishment going on in Florida. Yeah. So what is happening in the Middle East? You have Gaza, right? You have Lebanon. People are dying in Gaza from weapons that have been aided by who? America. So America, due to the tyrants that have been chosen and put in place, they have put money into making this whole bloodshed. Like it's blood money. Like literally, it's blood money. Yeah. That's being pumped into the Middle East. So these crazy people can have weapons and do the atrocities that they're doing right now. And then you have in Lebanon, due to the money that is being pumped over there to do the atrocities that are going on in Lebanon, people are being displaced. There are millions of refugees. These people have no homes. They don't know where to go. And now look at that sin that's been created by the hands of the people in America by voting for this tyrant who has committed such atrocities in the Middle East. Now that sin, they have to pay for it. Why? It's karma. So by how? Is it because God's like, oh, you rejected my messenger, so I'm going to send a hurricane to you? No, of course not. It's because millions are dying and you did nothing about it, and you in fact aided towards it.
Exactly. We cannot take our actions lightly, even though it's something that we're used to. All of this things, like they're causing these huge consequences, like in other parts of the world, and of course these consequences are going to come back to us.
So imagine what you're doing is like you're voting for this person, and you're sitting then in your sofa on your couch at home, and you're like, oh, I see all these wars, I see all these disasters happening.
Nothing to do with me.
nothing to do with me.
They're just crazy.
You know, it's that president who allowed it to happen. I mean, well, you chose that president.
Or you're a mute devil and you're not doing
exactly,
anything.
and you're not doing
which
anything.
Is worse. So the way Abu Sadiq from His Peace has like spoken about this, it's crazy how you can't actually open your ears and hear this. Like I myself, who is a believer in this, the messenger Abu Sadiq, I'm also so like amazed and shocked and scared for the people, because it's insane. How can you sit in your homes knowing these atrocities are taking place, knowing even the home you're sitting in is probably about to be destroyed because of you not doing anything about it, and you and nobody wants to think this is the time you actually should be on your knees. Whether you're atheist, Jew, Hindu, doesn't matter what religion. If you're a sane human being, and you know how you're just a mortal, and you're so vulnerable, like something like a wind can break you. You're not as powerful as you think you are. Like you can be squashed like a bug, just like this. You can just wake up and a car can hit you. Like don't see yourself as something so great. Like you should really be humble. Like wake up that this man is trying to help you. How? By telling you from your own books, this is how you help yourself.
He's basically saying repent and follow God, and then what you do is you either leave that city, okay, or if you have problems like you don't have the right passport or you can't really leave that country, what do? You go and you write allegiance is to God on your door.
Yes, you proclaim your faith. You say I believe in the supremacy of God. And this is a Pharaoh on top of me. You admit it. You admit it like the Israelites admitted that Pharaoh was on top of them and they believed in Moses, wherever they were, even if they couldn't leave. The point is you proclaim it. You proclaim your faith. Doesn't matter about the consequences, because the consequences that are coming to you right now, they're way worse. Like this is what your hands have brought forth. You earned this with your own hands, and nobody can point fingers at God.
And it's never too late.
No, it isn't. Of course not.
There's actually a story about this man who believed in God. I heard this story before, and it's pretty relatable to what we're talking about. So this man, he's praying to God all day, every day. So then God is pleased with him for praying and repenting. So then a big, huge storm is gonna come. Like a big storm is coming. Everybody's leaving. They're like freaking out, and he's like, "I'm not worried. I prayed to God. God is gonna save me." So then a boat comes, and they say, "Hey, come on this boat. We have room for one more. Come with us because the big storm is coming." So he says, "I'm not worried. I prayed to God, and He's gonna save me." So then another boat comes. The storm is like coming really close. It's about to hit. Everybody's leaving. Everybody's left except for this man. So a boat comes and they say, "Hey, we have room for one more. Please come. Please come. You're crazy. What are you still doing here?" And he says, "I'm not worried. God is gonna save me." Then a helicopter comes. Last resort. The storm is already like there. Every house is just getting destroyed, and this man is like, no thanks. God is gonna save me. So then he dies in the storm, and then he goes to God and he was like, "I prayed for you. I thought that you were gonna save me." And he said, "Look, I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter.
What else do you want? Like I gave you so much."
Exactly. So we need to like we talked about this before. We have to take our false expectations and throw them out of the window. We need to see the world for what it really is, the situation for what it really is. We need to do as Jasmine said. In order to avoid the punishment, you have to leave. Or do as the Jews did during Passover, where they were commanded by the messenger of God, by God. He said, "Slaughter a lamb, and then put the lamb's blood on your doorpost." So now the messenger of God is telling you to do the same thing, but write allegiances to God, allegiances to Allah, in Arabic, in English, whatever language that you want. If you've heard this message, do this.
Yes.
Put allegiances to Allah, believe it with your heart, and you will be saved from the punishment.
Yeah.
It's, these stories, this Passover holiday that we're celebrating every single year, God never does anything for no reason. God knows
He doesn't
everything.
do it just so you can make it out into a holiday in the future. Like,
Yeah.
it was
Exactly.
a real thing for those people.
Exactly. It's very real. What's happening now.
You can really
is very
feel
real.
the heaviness of this time and like
Exactly.
this time, this like anticipation of like what's about to happen basically. And when Abu Sadiq, from him his peace, gave this instruction, it was like, I don't know, it was very like
really
mind-blowing
real.
to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, this is a solution basically for all the believers who are stuck.
Exactly.
And everyone who's hearing this message and believes in this message and understands that we're living in these end times, we're living in this time before the punishment. This is a way that you can be saved, by believing and accepting the supremacy of God, that God is the one who appoints the ruler and we should only have God ruling over us and none of these tyrants who have caused this mess that we're in today.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, first of all, you have to look at yourself. You have to examine yourself. You have to realize what you have brought forth with your hands. So, for the Jews, ask yourselves, if you're following somebody who's appointed by God, just like God commanded you in the Torah and Deuteronomy when Moses was taking the covenant between God and the people, he said, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. And he said that when you ask for a king from the Lord, make sure that it's a king that I appoint for you. These were the words of God to the Jewish people. So are you following the person who is appointed by God? Or are you following a person the likes of King Herod, who is only going to lead you to destruction and the wrath of God, and a punishment is coming to you? So you have to decide for yourself. You have to use that to be your compass.
Exactly.
So, the reason why you guys are celebrating the Passover every day, it's because it is relevant to right now, to every day and age. And then the Christians, you have to ask yourselves, are you following what Jesus says? Is what you're doing, what you are giving your support to, who you're supporting, who you're following, who you're electing into to be a president, to be your leader? Is that the person that Jesus would choose for you? Because Jesus himself, he said to follow and obey God alone. And he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So he was saying that the person that God sends, the messenger of God, the Son of God, whatever that you would like to call him, this is the only way to be saved. It's not the Bible. It's not teachings. It's not the rabbis. He says, I am. So he was telling you that the messenger of God is the only way to salvation. So, and then the Muslims, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, he said, Allah said through him that he will not change the condition of a people until the people change what's within them.
Exactly.
And Imam al-Sadiq, he also said that the oppressor is a sword that Allah uses to take revenge on the people, and then he takes revenge on him.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you are being oppressed, it's not because God is rewarding you. He's not bestowing his mercy on you. He's actually angry with you. The wrath of God is on you. So when you're saying the Fatiha, Surah Al-Fatiha every single day for 5 times a day, you need to make sure that you are on the right side. You're not the one. You're not the one that God is angry with, but you are the one who is on the straight path.
Yeah.
And those who are on the straight path, you see in the Quran which gifts God gives those people, and which gifts He rewards the people who don't believe, and those are the ones that are happening right now. You're only getting rewarded for your own deeds, which are not the deeds of the righteous.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, this episode that came out, which was released by Abba al-Sadiq from Him Is Peace, which you can see on the Mehdi Has Appeared channel, is called We Do Not Punish Until We Send a Messenger, which is obviously named after this verse in the Quran. And Abba al-Sadiq from Him Is Peace, the Qaim of the family of Muhammad, has been warning the people of this punishment since 2015, which is about to hit mankind. So please do go to the channel and watch the episode. And we'll be back tomorrow with another episode of The Disturbing Truth. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.